The bridge groaned, then cracked, and for a moment, everything stopped. I watched from the ridge as Karen screamed, scrambling backward in her heels, while the gleaming new HOA footbridge collapsed into my creek like a slow-motion disaster movie. The board had just finished cutting the ribbon. Now their vanity project was sinking into the mud they swore didn't exist. Freeze frame. Yep, that's me. And you're probably wondering how I ended up sabotaging a $250,000 bridge in broad daylight and still walking away the legal winner. Well, grab a lawn chair. Because this story starts with land theft, ends in federal court, and has a little structural sabotage sprinkled in the middle. Let's rewind. When I first bought the land, it was peace I was after. Real, rural peace. The kind you can taste in the morning fog and feel in the quiet hum of frogs at dusk. My stretch of property sat right outside the city limits, just far enough from the noise and nonsense, but close enough that I could get gas and groceries without a whole expedition. It was 3 acres of untamed charm, a moss-covered creek running the length of the western boundary, old oaks lining the ridge like watchful sentries, and a patch of stubborn prairie grass I swore I'd never mow. I thought I'd finally outrun the HOA madness I'd dealt with in the suburbs. That illusion lasted exactly 6 weeks. I first met Karen Reynolds on a Thursday afternoon, right as I was unloading fence posts from the back of my truck. Blonde, crisp-collared sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. She waved like we were already neighbors and marched across the property line without so much as a pause. "Hi there," she called out. "You must be the new owner of Parcel 14B. I'm Karen, HOA president for Willow Ridge Meadows, just on the other side of the creek." I nodded politely, already regretting not pretending I was deaf. She smiled the way salespeople do before they upsell you on a warranty you don't need. "We're really excited about the bridge project. This little waterway will be such a charming crossing point for our community path system. Connects the east and west cul-de-sacs beautifully. We'll have construction markers placed by the end of the week. Shouldn't be disruptive, but I wanted to extend the courtesy of letting you know." I blinked. "I'm sorry. What bridge?" Karen's face twitched, just slightly. "Oh, it was in the newsletter. The board approved it last month. It'll span right over the creek. A footbridge, of course. Nothing invasive. Improves community access. Raises home values. Very standard." I dropped the post-hole digger mid-sentence. "Karen, that creek's on my property. Every inch of it." Her smile barely faltered. "Oh, I think there's some confusion. Our legal maps show a public access easement running adjacent to the stream." "Adjacent isn't across," I said. "That easement's for utility maintenance, not a footbridge to parade strangers across my land." She adjusted her sunglasses. "Well, I'm sure it'll all get sorted out. We've already submitted permits to the county." With that, she turned and strutted back across the grass, like she hadn't just declared eminent domain on my damn creek. That night, I pulled every piece of paper from the file drawer, deed, title, the old plat map from 1973. No easement, no public access. Nothing but bold black lines making one thing perfectly clear. The creek and a 15-foot buffer on either side belonged to me. The next morning, the markers went up anyway. Bright orange flags stuck in the ground like they were claiming territory for the Queen. I watched from my porch as a survey crew measured the banks, dropped pink paint dots, and took photos. One guy stepped onto my land without a word. "You're trespassing," I called. He waved vaguely and kept snapping pictures. I started filming on my phone, time-stamping everything. Day 1 of documentation. It only got worse from there. Within the week, a trailer showed up loaded with rebar, concrete bags, and steel framing. The workers didn't knock. They just marched down the slope and started laying forms. When I confronted the foreman, he muttered something about orders from the board and handed me a printed plan set. Willow Ridge Connector Bridge. Phase 1. Right there on the plan, bold as sin. It showed a concrete span running straight across my creek, anchored on my side by a poured footer, buried 2 feet into my bank. I circled the date on the blueprint, approved 2 weeks before I'd even closed on the property. That explained the smugness in Karen's smile. This had been in motion long before I arrived. Problem was, nobody bothered to check if the land they were building on actually belonged to them. I called the county office, filed a preliminary complaint, and faxed over my plat map with a handwritten note. No permission given. Construction on private property is illegal. Didn't stop them. The bridge footing went in 2 days later. Concrete trucks, wheelbarrows, a generator, even a porta-potty showed up, right in the shade of my oldest oak tree. I had footage of every truck, every intrusion. I started a file on my desktop labeled Exhibit A. I documented every new development like I was building a case, because I was. Karen stopped pretending we were friendly. She started sending me cheery HOA bulletins with passive-aggressive lines like, "We appreciate all neighbors who contribute positively to community connectivity." When I emailed back a cease and desist letter drafted by my lawyer friend in Missouri, I got a one-line reply. Per our legal review, your claims lack merit. Construction continues. So I stopped arguing and got quieter. I started attending HOA meetings, not in person, but through a back door. See, while I couldn't vote, I had a friend who could, a guy named Eric who owned the lot on the other side of the creek, just one corner touching the HOA's edge. He agreed to attend meetings in my name. Eric started recording the board sessions, and boy, did that pay off. Karen was recorded stating that Mr. Me has been difficult, but we've chosen to proceed under quiet title assumptions. Quiet title, my ass. They were gambling that I didn't have the time or resources to fight them. What they didn't realize is that I've got a stubborn streak a mile wide, and nothing but time when I'm pissed. I visited the assessor's office twice. I dug up the original land surveys. I found discrepancies between the developer's 2006 site plan and the actual topography. I found out the so-called easement they referenced was revoked in 1984 after a failed utility expansion. They were building a bridge on Fantasy. Meanwhile, every week, I walked the site and took pictures. One by one, I logged every change. Rebar placement, beam deliveries, poured deck forms, even the cheap sealant they used on the footers. I knew how long it would last. I wasn't just planning to stop them. I was planning to time it perfectly. I didn't want the bridge stopped. I wanted it built, and I wanted it built badly. Because only then could I prove it was built illegally, unsafely, and without the landowner's consent. I wasn't just going to fight them. I was going to bury them with their own ambition. And it all started with a quiet creek, a smug HOA president, and a bridge no one had permission to cross. The first real sign that the war was going nuclear wasn't the screaming or the cease and desist letters. It was the silence. The kind of weaponized suburban silence that creeps in like fog, slow and cold and everywhere at once. It started with the stairs. The old couple who used to wave when they passed my front gate suddenly stared straight ahead like I was a ghost. The joggers who usually nodded and smiled now crossed the street when they saw me outside. Even the mailman, who once joked about my ridiculous driveway slope, began stuffing my mail with robotic efficiency. No eye contact, no chatter. Then came the letters. At first, I thought they were just more HOA nonsense, but when I opened the first envelope and saw the words, "Why do you hate community progress?" scrawled in Sharpie on notebook paper, I knew I'd stepped into something nastier than zoning lines and property markers. Another note arrived 3 days later, no return address. One person shouldn't hold back an entire neighborhood. Selfish. And then a third, printed this time, cut-out magazine letters, like a damn ransom note. "We'll build the bridge with or without you." I brought them inside, laid them on the table like crime scene evidence, and labeled each with a sticky note. Karen's PR campaign, Phase 1. Because that's what it was, a full-blown smear job. Karen wasn't just building a bridge anymore, she was building a narrative. And in that narrative, I was the villain. The hermit, the obstructionist, the man on the hill standing in the way of connectivity. The HOA newsletter ran a piece called "Healing a Divided Neighborhood" that didn't name me directly, but it didn't need to. The article included a graphic of the bridge and a dotted line that stopped exactly at my property line. Current barriers to completion. it read in bold, subtle as a brick through a window. Then came the violations. Bright orange notices started showing up on my gate every other day like they were breeding. One accused me of having uncut grass above the community standard. Never mind that I'd mowed the day before and had time-stamped footage to prove it. Another cited my split-rail fence as hazardously aged, even though it had passed county inspection just 2 months earlier. A third warned of standing water, claiming mosquito risk. A puddle, no larger than a dinner plate, from where my hose had leaked during irrigation. They were clearly retaliatory. Sloppy, desperate, but aggressive. I scanned everyone, logged them into my file, and added a new folder, HOA violation harassment. It was time to turn the volume up on my own surveillance. I installed 2 new trail cams, pointed at the bridge construction area, one on the far tree line where the work crew liked to stash materials, and one mounted under the eave of my barn with a wide-angle lens. I set them to record on motion triggers, 24/7. And just like I suspected, the footage started getting interesting real fast. First, I caught them dumping concrete footings on my side of the creek. No permits posted, no inspectors present, just 2 guys with a skid loader and a whole lot of audacity, digging into my embankment and pouring in quickset mix like it was their God-given right. I clipped the footage, marked the time, and filed it. 3 days later, they started trenching. And not just shallow erosion-controlled ditches. I'm talking serious trench work, running a buried pipe through the bank to divert creek overflow under the bridge foundation. A week later, I walked the creek bed and realized the natural curve had been altered. They'd rechanneled the water. I measured the shift, about 4 feet west. My side. They were literally redirecting the creek to stabilize their foundation. That's when I called the county. The environmental office connected me with a field agent named Erica Ladd. Sharp, dry-humored, and exactly the kind of bureaucratic grenade I needed. She came out 2 days later with a clipboard, boots, and a bad attitude. They filed nothing, she told me after 15 minutes of pacing the creek's edge. No hydrology report, no soil displacement assessment, and absolutely no watershed alteration permits. This is a Class C infraction minimum, maybe higher depending on the flow displacement. She flipped a page and tapped her pen against the form. You know what this means, right? I nodded. Oh, I know. They're screwed, but they don't know it yet. Erica filed her report. I followed it up with my own formal cease and desist letter, citing the violations, attaching photos and timestamps, and CCing the county clerk, the zoning board, and the Environmental Commission for good measure. I even had it hand-delivered to the HOA office, where a poor intern signed for it like she was accepting a nuclear bomb. Karen's response? She added a new bullet point to the next HOA meeting agenda, addressing misinformation and obstruction regarding the community bridge project. And the bridge work didn't stop. In fact, it accelerated. That's when I realized they were trying to finish it before the paperwork caught up. Build it fast, clean it up later. Same playbook developers use when they know they're on borrowed time. So I changed my approach. I stopped fighting by their rules. They wanted a legal war, sure, but they didn't realize I'd been playing chess while they were still arguing over monopoly tokens. I printed signs and posted them along my side of the creek. Private property. Unauthorized construction in violation of County Code 16.7c. Trespassers will be recorded and prosecuted. I reported every workday to the sheriff's department. They did nothing, of course. Said it was a civil dispute. But now, there was a paper trail. Every log entry, every ignored complaint. I planted orange survey flags at the true boundary line, each one staked into the ground and marked with my parcel number and GPS coordinates. I called the local paper and gave a quote under anonymity. Resident alleges HOA ignored environmental codes for bridge project. They printed it. Karen freaked. But the moment I knew the tide was turning came from an unexpected source. The new guy, Steve, moved in 2 weeks ago. Young family, golden retriever, the whole catalog cover image. He knocked on my door one morning, hat in hand, literally. Sorry to bother you, he said. But is it true they never got permission for the bridge? I raised an eyebrow. You heard that? He nodded. Karen's been telling everyone you're the reason the project is delayed. But then I looked at the plans. It cuts across your land. That can't be legal. I didn't say anything. I just handed him a copy of the site map, the plat, and the cease and desist letter. He took them, eyes wide. Jesus, he whispered. They really did this. They did, I said. And they're not done. Word spread fast after that. Quietly but surely. The smears stopped. The cold stares turned hesitant. Some neighbors even started saying hello again. Karen had overplayed her hand. The bridge was turning from a point of pride to a potential lawsuit, and all I had to do now was wait and make sure when it all came crashing down, I had the receipts. Because this wasn't just about a footbridge anymore. This was about every rule Karen had broken to build it, every lie she told to protect it, and every quiet neighbor who finally saw the cracks in her perfect pastel-colored HOA kingdom. You'd be surprised how many secrets a bridge will tell you if you just get close enough to listen. I'm not a licensed structural engineer, but after 3 decades in commercial construction, enough poured concrete and I-beams to fill a minor city, I know a thing or two about how things are supposed to hold, and more importantly, how they fail. It started with a casual inspection. I say casual, but I was wearing steel-toe boots, a reflective vest I dug out of storage, and carried a clipboard with a red sticker on it that just said, Site Observation, Property Owner. No one asked what agency I was with. They just assumed I was someone they should probably not piss off. I walked the length of that cursed bridge in progress twice. Slow, deliberate steps, counting bolts, measuring beam spans, checking rebar spacing with a pocket ruler. The crew mostly ignored me, probably assuming I was some low-level inspector with too much time on his hands. One guy even offered me a bottle of water. Nice kid. I noted the misalignments right away. Cheap formwork, reused plywood in some places, uneven expansion gaps, and, my personal favorite, a gap between the eastern support pad and the actual deck that had been shimmed with crushed gravel and rebar cutoffs. They'd done this fast, sloppy, and out of sequence. My guess? Pressure from the HOA board to finish before any legal injunctions came down. Their arrogance had finally outpaced their shortcuts, but the golden goose was hiding right underneath the southern footing. That's where I spotted the real gift. A support brace that had been jury-rigged into the side slope using a steel anchor plate, not rated for exterior erosion zones. It was half buried in what used to be stable soil, but now sat on a washed-out slope, thanks to the trench they dug to reroute my creek. The pipe they'd installed was sagging, already buckling under a week of spring storms. I didn't have to guess what would happen next. I could practically see the future. So I did what any reasonable man does when he knows the weather, the gravity, and the stupidity are all on his side. I flagged it. I filed a formal letter to the HOA's construction liaison, stating that as the owner of the land beneath the southern footing, I had conducted a visual inspection and found evidence of substandard support and risk of foundation compromise due to accelerated erosion. I keyed the county environmental inspector, Karen, and a handful of board members. The response? An unsigned letter 2 days later from the HOA's legal team stating, Your concerns have been noted. Independent engineers retained by the Willow Ridge Meadows HOA have confirmed the structural integrity of the bridge as designed. Further interference with construction will be considered obstruction. Obstruction. Cute. I printed the letter, added it to my growing stack of exhibits, and went back to the bridge, at night, with gloves. Now, let me be clear. I didn't destroy anything. I didn't even touch the load-bearing columns. That's what makes this fun. It wasn't sabotage. It was subtraction. All I did was remove a single stabilizing wedge someone had lazily shoved beneath a temporary column brace, a chunk of wood, not rated for compression, wedged there just until they poured the final grout, which, according to my inspection notes, they never actually did. I took that wedge. That's it. No cutting, no hammering, no explosions. Just one little piece of dry pine, aged with time and water damage, crumbling in my hand as I pocketed it and walked away into the fog. From there, it was only a matter of waiting. Nature, that lovely old conspirator, did the rest. That week, we got hammered with rain. Not a thunderstorm, not a flash flood, just steady, miserable, soaking rain. Every day for 6 days. The kind of rain that makes your bones ache. The kind of rain that seeps into your subfloor and settles in your crawl space and gently, methodically, erodes the confidence of any man who says, "It'll be fine." And then came the grand opening. I got the invite, everyone did. Glossy postcards left in mailboxes, stapled to community corkboards, emailed with a pastel banner. Ribbon-cutting ceremony for the Willow Ridge Community Footbridge. Join us for cupcakes, speeches, and progress. Karen even posted a video message in the neighborhood Facebook group, wearing her HOA badge like a sheriff's star. "We're proud to complete this project ahead of schedule and under budget," she beamed. "This is about connection, unity, community values." If only she'd known what was coming. I showed up early, brought a thermos of coffee and a folding chair, and parked it about 20 yards away from the southern slope, just inside the tree line. Didn't say a word to anyone. Just watched. A local news guy was there, small-time affiliate. Probably promised a scoop. A drone buzzed overhead, capturing wide shots of the pristine white bridge, with its decorative rails and planter boxes zip-tied to the handrails. I saw Karen in a blue blazer, flanked by 3 board members, Greg, Susan, and Fred. Fred was the one who always asked if I really needed so many trees on my property. They gathered at the foot of the bridge, while a crowd of about 40 residents stood behind them, phones out, umbrellas up, kids in tow. Rain had let up that morning, sun peeking through just enough to make everyone feel like it was meant to be. Greg handed Karen the oversized scissors. She raised them with theatrical flair and said, "Today, we cross into the future. Together." Click. The ribbon fell. Cheers erupted. And the board members, all 4, stepped onto the bridge. I could see the shift before they did. The southern footing dipped half an inch the moment they moved past center. You wouldn't notice it unless you were watching closely. But I was. A faint cracking sound followed. Not the snap of wood. This was deeper, older. The sound of concrete groaning against soil that had given up trying to hold it. Then came the real noise, a deep, wet crunch, followed by a lurch that dropped the whole south end of the bridge by a foot. Screams. Chaos. People scattered. Greg fell backwards, skinned his elbow. Susan grabbed the railing just in time to avoid a full swan dive into the mud. The drone, to its credit, caught every glorious frame. One planter box flew off the edge like a missile and hit the creek with a splash. And Karen, oh Karen, went down on one knee in the middle of the deck, arms flailing like she was trying to flag down a rescue helicopter. Her hair was soaked, her blazer streaked with mud, her face pure, shrieking confusion, the kind that only appears when reality contradicts the story you've sold so hard for so long. I didn't move, just took a long sip of coffee and snapped one photo from my perch. And then, the best part, the neighborhood group chat exploded. Videos from every angle, slow-mo replays, memes. Someone slapped "We built this city" over a montage of Karen slipping. Within an hour, there was a gif of Greg falling with the caption, "Bridge too far, Greg." Karen's face was in 15 different group threads by sunset. A new Facebook group popped up that night. The Collapse of Willow Ridge. Fails and funnies. Membership hit 400 by morning. OA credibility? Flatlined. And I hadn't even sued them yet. Not one person got seriously hurt. Just bruised egos and wet socks. But the bridge? That thing was done. The southern footing had shifted so badly that engineers declared it structurally unsound within 48 hours. And the best part? They couldn't blame me. I hadn't laid a finger on their precious structure after construction. The rain did the rest. Nature did the rest. Karma did the rest. And all I had to do was let gravity do its job. 3 days after the bridge collapsed, I received a knock on my door that might as well have come with circus music. A man in khakis and a regrettable comb-over handed me a manila envelope and said the words I'd been waiting for. "You've been served." Karen Reynolds, in all her muddy glory, was suing me for intentional sabotage, property damage, obstruction of community development, and, my personal favorite, malicious negligence. Malicious negligence. I chuckled as I flipped through the thick stack of accusations. Her lawyer's letterhead, printed in faux gold font like this, was the damn Declaration of Independence. The lawsuit read like a high school essay, complete with dramatic adjectives and wild speculation. According to Karen, I had deliberately undermined the community bridge by removing critical support, despite having repeatedly denied involvement. She even claimed I fomented discontent among residents and sought to erode public trust. Erode. That part made me laugh out loud. What she didn't know, and what her lawyer would soon deeply regret, was that I had prepared for this day like a man preparing for battle. While Karen was busy playing HOA Empress and posing for ribbon cuttings, I'd been documenting every inch of her kingdom's rot. My counterclaim was filed the next morning, 1 inch thicker than hers. Titled in bold, Countersuit for Trespass, Unlawful Construction, Defamation, and Fraudulent Misrepresentation. And oh, I came loaded for bear. Attached were 24 time-stamped videos, drone footage from my buddy Greg, who now owed me a favor since I'd helped him extract a possum from his attic, 5 certified land surveys, including the original 1973 plat map, 2 independent engineering reports confirming structural failure due to improper footing installation, and, the crown jewel, a packet of internal HOA emails anonymously forwarded to me from a concerned board member with no name but a very distinctive writing style. These emails revealed Karen had pressured the board to skip inspections, fast-track construction to avoid new environmental regulations, and, in one glorious line, wrote, "Once the bridge is finished, he won't have a legal leg to stand on. It'll be a done deal." That sentence would become my attorney's favorite exhibit in the entire trial. We scheduled court, and then I let the fuse burn. Karen tried to rally the troops online, posting half-baked statements in the Willow Ridge Facebook group like, "Some people just don't understand community values," and "One selfish neighbor can't stop our vision for progress." But the comments weren't going her way anymore. After the bridge collapse, after the Facebook memes, and after the HOA increased everyone's dues to offset emergency repair costs, the neighborhood was no longer clapping for their queen. The court date finally arrived, and the moment I stepped into that courtroom, everything went quiet. Karen was seated at the plaintiff's table in a navy blue pantsuit that looked one size too tight for the pressure she was under. Her lawyer, a man who kept adjusting his tie like it was trying to choke him, glanced nervously between her and the judge. My counsel, a no-nonsense woman named Dana Fields, carried herself like she was already bored of winning. We opened with footage. Exhibit A, Karen's bridge collapsing in glorious 1008 IP from 6 different angles. Exhibit B, the same bridge being built directly on my private property, with a close-up of the survey stakes I'd planted and clearly labeled with parcel numbers. The judge paused playback and leaned over his bench. "This is your land?" "Yes, Your Honor. And here's the original plat map from 1973 and a certified GPS overlay from last year confirming it." Karen's lawyer objected. The HOA was operating under the assumption of a shared easement. "Assumption?" Dana repeated flatly. "Assumptions don't hold up in court, counselor. Deeds do." Then came the emails. Karen's own words, projected on a screen like a PowerPoint from hell. "Fast track it before he files anything. We'll adjust the maps if necessary. It's not trespassing if we own the narrative." The judge raised an eyebrow. "Did the HOA knowingly falsify or ignore legal land boundaries?" Dana smiled. "We believe the next exhibit will answer that." Exhibit C, the altered community improvement plan submitted to the county, with erased easement notations and digitally shifted parcel lines. The judge took off his glasses. "This alone could warrant criminal charges." Karen squirmed. Her lawyer whispered furiously. I didn't hear what he said, but the sweat on his forehead was starting to form its own ecosystem. Then came the financials. Exhibit D, contractor invoices paid to Pine Span Development, a newly formed LLC, with no online presence and a registered address matching Karen's cousin's law office. payments totaling $237,000 for emergency materials, and accelerated construction labor. My accountant broke it down. Inflated costs, no competitive bids, and zero insurance coverage listed. So, the judge said, rubbing his temples, the HOA approved a major construction project on private land, used community funds to pay a shell company tied to the board president's family, and failed to file any permits with the zoning or environmental board? Correct, Your Honor. Dana handed him one final folder. Here's the county inspector's report confirming they violated at least 4 environmental codes related to waterway alteration, soil erosion, and protected creek buffers. Do you have any record of the HOA contacting the property owner for permission? No, Your Honor. Karen tried to speak. Her lawyer stopped her. For a moment, the courtroom felt like church, the kind of silence reserved for funerals and hard truths. The judge leaned forward. Miss Reynolds, it's my opinion that you and your board acted recklessly, illegally, and with clear intent to bypass proper channels in pursuit of a project that not only endangered your neighbor's safety, but also violated the fundamental rights of the defendant. I find in favor of Mr. Me, and I'm awarding him full damages, legal fees, and an injunction permanently halting any future construction on or through his property. You could have heard a pin drop. Then the judge added, almost as an afterthought, and I'm referring this case to the district attorney for further investigation into misappropriation of funds. Karen's jaw hung open. Her lawyer sat back like he'd just been hit by a truck full of paperwork. Over the next month, it all unraveled. The entire HOA board resigned, one by one, their little kingdom crumbling with each press release. The newsletter went silent. The bridge was cordoned off with caution tape and eventually dismantled by county order. Karen? She sold her home to cover the settlement. I got a check large enough to cover my legal bills, replace the creek bank erosion, and take a well-earned vacation to Alaska. But before I did, I made one final improvement to the property. Right where the bridge footing used to be, just past the edge of my oak tree line, I drove in 2 solid posts and hung a hand-carved wooden sign between them. It read, "Private property, structural integrity guaranteed." And every now and then, when I see someone from the old board pass by on the road, heads down, HOA badges nowhere to be seen, I raise my coffee cup, tip my hat, and enjoy the one thing no board can regulate: peace and quiet, on land that's finally, undeniably, mine.